It is 12 noon. Welcome back in. Lunch hour. Great radio stations across the state of Alabama tuning us in. A lot of college football talk as we're just 9 days away from the official start of the college football season, a couple weeks away before SEC teams get in action. As we continue our preview around the league, we now go over to the great state of Mississippi. Brian Hadad joins us from SportsTalk Mississippi, another one sports show over in the state of Mississippi. He joins us now. Brian, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're as excited as we are as we're almost there.
I am, it's difficult to keep yourself in your chair at this time of year. You're just ready for college football. They call it week 0 next weekend, but I will be locked in on Iowa State and Kansas State. Don't worry about that.
Oh, no, I think we're right there with you. So, Brian, in regards to this Mississippi State football program, Jeff Lebby, obviously you got to go through those growing pains before you get to that promised land. Just where are things currently as they stand with Jeff Lebby and this football program?
I think that, by and large, fans are still on board with Jeff Lebby. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of questions when you go 2-10 in your first season. Nobody's going to be completely bought in to what you're doing. But I think that they know that Lebby, his offense gives State something it hasn't had in quite some time. Even with Mike Leach, I would never describe those teams as explosive offensively. And Jeff Lebby, his offense has a higher ceiling on it, I think, than any coach State has had in recent memory. So people want to believe in him, but this is a year where they got to show some major improvements. The schedule is incredibly difficult. The talent level, while much better than it was a season ago, probably still isn't quite where you'd want it going into SEC play. So he's got a lot of work to do. But like I said, at this time of year, optimism reigns supreme. Everybody's undefeated. So Mississippi State fans are excited for that season opener, but they definitely want to see what it looks like when we get to Hattiesburg in 2 weeks.
Brian, heading into last season, you looked at all the losses that the defensive side of the ball had prior to Lebby getting there. That was a concern. It certainly showed up on Saturdays. How much better with the additions and another year in the system do you believe that this Mississippi State defense will be?
I think, from a roster perspective, a talent perspective, it's night and day from a season ago. You've got some guys who can play at this level. Last year, we'll just be honest, a lot of the guys in the 2 deep for Mississippi State had no business playing Southeastern Conference football. I think this year in your 2 deep, you've got plenty of guys who can play at this level. My concern for State is, Mississippi State is a university that has produced some great defensive talent over the last decade, guys who have gone on to great careers in the NFL. Difference makers in the SEC. I don't know who those difference makers are. I really like Isaac Smith. He was one of the leading tacklers. I think he was the leading tackler in the SEC last year. But I think a lot of that was just because he was on the field a lot and the defense was on the field a lot, and he was the guy making the tackle. I don't necessarily know that it was because he was this elite player. So I don't know if State has the difference makers to be great defensively. They need to make a jump from where they were a year ago, which was the worst defense in the SEC by a whopping large margin, to just being, if they could jump to below average this year, that would be massive for them. If they could be the 12th best defense in the conference this year, that would be a huge jump. So that's kind of the good news and the bad news all at once, because, hey, if you jump to 12th, that's a huge improvement. But jumping to 12th will require a huge improvement from where they were a season ago.
So you were talking about additions. Talk about the transfer portal in regards to maybe some of the players that left Starkville, but they were very active in getting guys to come in. Were those more depth pieces, or are there some pieces, in your opinion, that can add to those ones and be difference makers, especially on the offensive side of the ball?
On the offensive side of the ball, your receiving core is basically all new. The only guy coming back is Jordan Mosley, who made any kind of contribution last year. Kelly Akari off to the NFL. Mario Craver transfers to Texas A&M. Kevin Coleman to Missouri. So you bring in some guys, Brennan Thompson from Oklahoma, Aiden Williams from Ole Miss, Anthony Evans from Georgia, Marcus Allen and Cam Thompson both played in the MAC last year. It's a lot of new faces. There's not a lot of proven production in that receiver room. But I will say this, Lebby, for all he's a very much a coach speaky kind of guy. But when things are right or things are wrong, he'll tell you when it comes to a particular room. he is really confident, as is his receivers coach, Chad Bumpus, in this group. They really like what they have at that receiver position. So a lot of new faces there. And then on the offensive line as well, State was very active in the second portal window after the spring. I think right now State's first-team offensive line will have at least 2 guys on it who didn't participate in spring practice here at Mississippi State. Blake Steen from Virginia and Zach Owens from Colorado, who transferred in following Phil Lodeholt, who was at Colorado a season ago, the assistant coach. He's the offensive line coach here at Mississippi State. Now, I expect both those guys, if not to start, to be massive contributors. So finding the right 5 guys on that offensive line, they're going to have to gel pretty quickly because they didn't have even the spring together to practice. So quarterback and running back, you've got a new running back there in Fluff Bothwell, but Devon Booth and Johnny Daniels coming back, big contributors for Mississippi State last year. And then, of course, Blake Shapen returns for his final year in Starkville. It's the same question with him year after year, right? Can you stay healthy? If Shapen can be healthy, he can be productive in this offense. If he's not, they're going to have to turn it over to either Luke Krummenhawk or the true freshman Kamario Taylor.
Ryan, with the arms race that is the SEC, and let's be honest, just college football, for Mississippi State, from a collective standpoint, and knowing that you're going to have a lot of money, you got to put money in the coffers if you're going to get players. Where is that in people that you've talked to? Is it healthier? How much healthier is it from a year ago when Jeff Lebby arrived?
It's in a good spot. It's a question I get a lot, and I understand that around the conference there's a perception that Mississippi State might be cash poor. State announced about a month ago that they had a record fundraising year, over $85 million into the coffers here at Mississippi State. A lot of that going into the NIL. Not the collective, but the way State runs things with their State Excellence Fund, a ton of money going into there. From a football perspective, I think State has plenty of money to spend. The problem is they went 2-10 last year with an unproven coach and an unproven defensive coordinator. And, elite talent's not really going to line up for you on that one. You still have to recruit those guys. I think if State shows some improvement this year, you'll see a big jump in what State's doing as far as the transfer portal. From a basketball and baseball perspective, State's up there with anybody, especially baseball right now with the hire of Brian O'Connor. I would expect State to be, and they had the number 1 transfer portal class in the country, so that kind of speaks to that. But from a football perspective, State's money is in a really good spot. They just got to be better on the field so they can attract better talent to Starkville.
Brian Hadad joins us from SportsTalk Mississippi, Super Talk Mississippi. You can hear him this afternoon in regards to all things Mississippi sports. All right, so let's talk about this schedule this year, because you go back to last year, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think Mississippi State in the second half against Texas, that was an extremely competitive football game. Matter of fact, a lot of people in Austin were concerned about that as the second half started. A very competitive game against the Georgia Bulldogs. When you look at this year's schedule, Brian, where are those games that you could see potentially Mississippi State would pull that proverbial upset or give a team like a Georgia or a Texas all they could want for in that game?
Well, they do get Georgia and Texas at home this year. And, last year you mentioned that Texas game. Going into the fourth quarter, that game was a lot closer than people thought it would be. The Georgia game, State was in that game. They lost by 10. They just couldn't get any stops, which was a theme last season, as you can imagine. For State, the games you have to circle, if you want to be a bowl-eligible team this year, if you want to get to 6 wins, you got to circle the Arizona State game, the first home game of the season. That's week 2 here in Starkville. It's going to be a night kickoff. Should be a good crowd if you handle your business week 1 down in Hattiesburg against Southern Mississippi. That's one for sure. At Arkansas, year in, year out, those two programs, the winner of that game usually ends up in a bowl game, and the loser of that game usually does not. So State going to Fayetteville this year, that'll be a tough test, but they need to find a way to win that one. Then it becomes, you got to win one more. Well, can you win at Missouri? What are the Tigers going to be this year with a new quarterback and a lot of new faces there? Can you get back on top in the Egg Bowl rivalry? Games in Starkville this year against Ole Miss. Ole Miss has a lot of question marks. I think they're very talented, and obviously Lane Kiffin is an elite coach. But, can you finally, turn that one back around and bring the Golden Egg back to the Starkville? So those are some opportunities there. It starts with week 2, though. If you don't beat Arizona State, you're going to have to win 3 SEC games. And with this team, that's going to be a very tough task.
Ryan, if you have the ability to draft any current SEC quarterback, anyone to come in and take over this offense right before the season starts that you think would make the biggest difference, who is that quarterback?
Wow. in this offense, I want a little bit of a running threat. I'm going to go DJ Lagway. If he's healthy, I'd go DJ Lagway. That's the guy I would pick. I think that what Lebby likes to do offensively, wants to have a mobile quarterback, wants his quarterback to contribute in the running game, but also wants to have a guy who can throw the ball down the field and make those vertical plays. I think Lagway would be an outstanding fit for State.
Brian, in regards to the rest of the Southeastern Conference, when we were all in Atlanta, the most conversation was basically 4 schools. And that's kind of how it ended up in the voting. And most people nationally are pointing to those 4 schools as the most likely schools to potentially either be back in Atlanta playing each other or making the college football playoff. How are you handicapping the SEC this year in regards to the pecking order, maybe those top-tier teams?
I had LSU as my SEC champion when we were in Atlanta. I'm sold on the Tigers, veteran quarterback, great transfer portal class. The schedule's not overly taxing. I do have them, keeping the tradition alive of going 0-1. They'll lose to Clemson, but I think
right.
I had them going undefeated after that. I have them playing Texas. I don't know why. I have Georgia losing the game to Texas for some reason. I don't know why. I didn't think that Georgia was going undefeated, and that was the game that stood out to me that I thought that they could lose. Georgia, and then Alabama is probably 4th. I think Alabama will lose to LSU and to Georgia. That's just my preseason prediction. But that at 10-2 should likely be in the college football playoff. Alabama's super talented, and if they put it all together, they can beat anybody. I just want to see a little bit more. And, Simpson, Manning, and Stockton, these are all unproven guys. Nussmeier is really the only proven guy in that class of the top 4 quarterbacks. So that's why I went with the Tigers.
That is Brian Hadad. You can hear him this afternoon from 3 to 6 on Super Talk there in the great state of Mississippi, Sports Talk Mississippi. Brian, tell Michael hello for us, and look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thanks, Brian.
Absolutely. Appreciate you guys.
Appreciate it very much. That's Brian Hadad joining us on the Higginbotham hotline. All of our guests join us on that hotline. You deserve solutions that are built for you. Higginbotham is your one-source solution for insurance, financial, and HR services.
Well, you can join me and so many others at the Finnick right there near Railroad Park in downtown Birmingham. Great sports bar and grill from the great menu. You're going to get with the wings, the wood-fired burgers, the steaks, the fresh salads, seafood, cocktails, multiple large screens throughout the venue to watch a variety of the SEC and NFL football this fall, along with other sports. You got the best games played on the best and largest screens in town with the best sound, in my opinion, you're going to find anywhere. NFL Sunday Ticket, Red Zone, you got the LED video walls, 283-inch projection screen. Come on. A billiards room if you're into playing pool, all kinds of great stuff you're going to find, and live music that you're going to get there on Wednesday, Thursday, and Fridays. The weekend's reserved for the sports, so the music doesn't get in the way. It's the Finnick, right there near Railroad Park, 1630 2nd Avenue South. Always tell them Landrum from 3-Man Front and Jock sent you.
Well, we've got a deal for you coming back. We're going to tell you how much it would cost you if you want to go to a post-game press conference at the University of Oklahoma football. That's next.